January 1st, 1968. Dear Robert, it's 5:40 a.m. All the noisemakers are asleep. They've worn themselves out through the night making merry, laughing, singing, pretending. It is strange indeed that a man can find anything to laugh about in here, but everyone in here is locked up 24 hours a day. They have no past, no future, no goal other than the next meal. They're afraid, confused, and confounded by a world they know that they did not make, that they feel that they cannot change, so they make these loud noises so they won't hear what their mind is trying to tell them. They laugh to assure themselves and those around them that they are not afraid, sort of like the superstitious individual who will whistle or sing a happy number as he passes the graveyard. Confinement in this small area all day causes a buildup of tension. The unavoidable consequence is stupidity, a return to childish behavior, overreaction. I refuse to let myself be punished with stuff like this. Locked in jail, within a jail, my mind is still free. I refuse ever to allow myself to be forced by living conditions into a response that is not commensurate with intelligence and my final objective. This will apply even more on the other side of the wall, out there where you are. What if there was nothing on earth that could be taken from me which would result in my discomfort? What if a person was so oriented that the loss of no material thing could cause him mental disorganization? This is the free agent. He is nameless, faceless, emotionless, loveless. He is without habit, without the weakness of the flesh. He travels light and only in the company of those who, like himself, prize self-determination above baseball and beer. Only the free agent can win for us the necessary control over the direction of our unrewarding lives. You should know that I only do what I think is best and most appropriate. I am a man with few alternatives. George. January 6, 1968. Dear Robert, I hope you are in health. Have you been bothered by the sickness, flu? Asian flu they call it. Everyone on the tier, everyone in the building really has had it, or still has it, except me. I have been lucky. I hope I do not catch it. We have no medicines. I have both of your letters here. I did not send the forms requesting a package because I didn't want you spending any money on unnecessary things. If I had money, I would never buy anything like that for myself. I'm completely indifferent about pleasure, temporary amenities. A crust of bread and a corner to sleep in, a moment to laugh and an hour to weep in. Well, I don't even want the moment. If that is all that I have coming, I don't want it. I don't know who you have been talking to about my condition here. Whoever they are, stop wasting your time. They are only leading you on. I hope you have lost no money, but I warned you about this before. It is clear that I must handle this thing myself, the best way that I can. Take care of yourself. George. January 16th, 1968. Dear Robert, nothing new to report. Same situation here. No progress. Went before a couple of persons responsible for the administration of this unit last week. They changed the rules to justify keeping me locked up another 6 months, until June at least. There is a rule that reads, if an inmate is involved in an assault upon another inmate and a weapon is associated in the incident, the inmate responsible must do at least 1 year locked up in closed confinement. Well, I've done my year for the thing that happened in January 67. Now I must do another for the affair in June 67, where the only weapons involved were those used against me. I think perhaps the time has come to get legal help for me. We can discuss it when you come up next time. These things are not being handled properly, or fairly. I'm the only one still suffering the effects of those two occurrences. Everyone else has been transferred to other institutions and is in the main population there. And I'm the only one who didn't write a writ at the time the thing took place. I tried to just shrug it off, but I see that does not work. They have accused me of leading something when all the evidence points to the contrary. I was the only one to cross the picket line during the strike, or one of the few. In June, I never raised my hand against an official. In fact, in all the 7 years I've been in the prison here, I have never attacked an official. I have difficulty leading myself, directing my own affairs. At the very least, I need a transfer. I cannot get fair treatment otherwise. Take care of yourself. George. January 31st, 1968. Dear Robert, I seriously believe that you have incurable middle-class attitudes, but nonetheless, you may be right. Regarding the blacks, quote, not letting me, that is, quote, I'll have to wait and take the situation in for myself, though. If you happen to be correct about that, I'm buying me a little sailboat and heading for the Indian Ocean area. Be a bum. No wife, no kids, no competition, bananas, coconuts, pineapples, fish, and sunshine. I could never bear what you have borne. I hope you arrived home without incident. I heard the weather was pretty bad. I almost got sucked into some more foolishness yesterday. All the blacks tilting at windmills again. Mindless, emotional, childish abandon, without a thought of winning. Just an attempt to prove their manhood to themselves, to any who may be watching. The result, further humiliation, and a month in a dark hole. I'm still in my cell. I had to turn my back on them when they wouldn't listen. Never, never will I take part in any foolishness. They have me locked up with a bunch of 20-year-old cretins who don't know anything about the ways of the world, hate books, can't think, and won't listen. Things are not getting any better. They are, if anything, getting worse. Bitter experience seems to be bringing out the worst in us instead of our best. Instead of growing thoughtful and determined, they get more emotional and mindless. You swallow a camel and gag on a nut. You accept a certain condition and treatment with apparent ease, but balk at the suggestion of returning the same. It doesn't matter a great deal to me either way. On an individual basis, I will always make out. I see this world just as it is, the whole thing, and most important, I see myself in relation to it. So I will be able to spring in any direction in which my mind tells me the rewards are greater. I'm going to frame a letter soon to you discussing the social contract and where the individual stands in relation to the state. None of it will be original. It will be the accepted dialectics of all those past and present who are in a position to know. You don't seem to know why you pay taxes and what you should expect in the way of returns. It should be clear that when one contributes to any enterprise, he has a return coming. And it is equally clear that when I place or allow an individual or group of individuals to administrate and regulate affairs that involve my bosom interests, these affairs must be handled in a judicious manner. When they are not, it is my right to replace these individuals any way that I can. Take care of yourself. George. February 8th, 1968. Dear Robert, I think you have gotten stuck in the mud somewhere down the road. There has never been any question as to whether or not we will be allowed to work. There has never been any question in my mind about the folly of one of us attempting to make himself acceptable to the established standard so that he will be tolerated. Am I for sale, and at such a price? Can true self-determination be won working for wages and salaries? What are the chances of the employee one day owning the manufacturing plant? What do I lose by allowing myself to be programmed, regimented, and assimilated? Has any people ever been independent that owned neither land nor tool? Isn't what you are calling for, you and the people who wrote the article, more of the same? The hewing of wood and the carrying of water? Do I want to identify with a loser and a fool? Can I help myself by helping one who is looked upon as the wretched of the earth? This is the question. Don't get sidetracked by specious argument. I know the answer to all the above questions, but I plan to keep it to myself for now. And of course, we are talking about groups of people. Our masses, not to be confused in any way with my personal chances for success. I know how to look out for me as an individual. I agree with what you say about brains. Nothing could be clearer. Every mass movement in history has been led by one person or a small group of people. Although everyone is born with a brain, only a few choose to use it. The difference between successful and unsuccessful mass movements is in the people who lead them. Successful ones are led by persons gifted with a delicate balance of both mental and physical forcefulness. Brains are useless without the nervous equipment and the muscle required to execute their orders. I also agree with what you say about the Chinese. They are poor. They went through the same thing that we went through for the same reason, a skin problem, and they suffered it at the hands of the same wretched force. It may be a while yet before they get over the last 100 years, but, and I know you agree, they are wonderful and aggressive, industrious people. They will make out. What I like most about them is their willingness to always help their brothers in Africa and Asia. They understand the need and power of ethnic solidarity. When they look in the mirror, they see themselves. When they look at us, they see their fathers and brothers. Brother is the way we'll call it. John is well, I hope. Can you imagine how foolish a stranger would be trying to turn me against John? I have no love for strangers regardless of the fact that they own the sweatshop I am forced to labor in. George. February 12th, 1968. Dear Robert, congratulations on the birthday. I may not be so lucky, but my values are a little different from yours. I am concerned with living fully, living well rather than living long. And since I have a measure of control over the former, and none whatever over the latter, this makes sense to me. You should read some of the stuff you have subscribed to for me. The New Republic is good. So is Ramparts. If Ramparts went any further, it cannot get published. Those news weeklies are all published by ultra right-wing conservatives, people of the establishment, who feel they have something at stake in the present order. I've been to Mexico. I have also been all over the U.S. I've spent several days in the neighborhood where you were born. That neighborhood is far poorer than anything I saw in Mexico. But since Mexico is a colony of the U.S. also, just as our communities are, all I can make of this fact that blacks here are worse off than Mexican nationals is that the U.S. colonial masters think more of Mexicans. So your taxes do all the things you say, including some you omitted, such as school educational matters, prisons, police wages, armies, H-bombs, spy ships, gas chambers, Tucker's farms, etc. But it is very curious to note who benefits by it all. Which streets get lighted best? Which child goes to school half a day in a trailer, or to a school that is so crowded and understaffed that he might as well not go for all the attention he gets? The police stopped me 5 times, 5 different cars, in the space of 3 blocks in Los Angeles once. All the brush wars the U.S. has fought in the last 20 years were against men of color around the world. I could go on all week about how your tax money is being used, but let it suffice for me to say it is not being used to help you or yours. You are getting no return on your investment. This is what taxes are supposed to be all about: an investment in the community, the society, a pooling of each individual's resources so that the administration can be financed, so that the administration can perform the jobs which must be done to ensure public welfare, and the jobs which no individual can do well alone. Now it follows that if everyone pays, everyone should get proper returns. The street lights should be the same in Watts and Bel Air. It seems that some dereliction of duty has indeed taken place. George. February 19th, 1968. Dear Robert, too bad about John. I suggested upon your last visit that he may be getting too much TV. Anyway, you are absolutely correct in that these are his crisis years. You had better give him something good in the way of purpose, identity, and method. It should be taken for granted that he is getting nothing along this line in school. If anything, these things are being trained out, so that he will be a good Negro, an individual, a non-person, an intellectual dependent. If you do not know the definition of purpose, identity, and method, it is already too late for John. I do not want to be addressed as George any longer. You will please respect my wishes enough to use my middle name from this day on. I won't respond to any other. My work goes well here. I am in health. I hope you are well. Take care of yourself. Lester. March 6, 1968. Dear Robert, I received the money today. Thanks. I got the forms off too. I hope you told them about the life thing. If not, please do it right away. I hope also my age was passed along as a reminder. People will look at you and think that I would have to be in my teens. Africa is a most wonderful continent. They have everything in the way of human and natural resources. Oil in Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, and Nigeria. Copper, diamonds, cobalt, and gold in Zambia. There are large deposits of iron ore in Liberia. A whole mountain of it, in fact. You name it, and it is found in some part of Africa. In the Savannah area south of the Sahara Desert and all the way south to the Cape, you find the most fertile farmland in the world. Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania are all just like a big park. The temperature never fluctuates more than 5 degrees the whole year around. Every evening during the winter months, there is a light rain to settle the dust, 80 to 85 the whole year. The 5 oldest cities in the world are located in Africa. The oldest language is one spoken in Africa, Mande. The oldest relic of man's prehistoric existence was found in Africa, 25 million years old. You find all kinds of black types, with wide noses, thin noses, aquiline noses, all types of hair, all shades of skin from the lightest ivory to blue-black. You should be more specific about what you want to know because it would take a month, and a letter the size of a telephone book to delineate all the resources of Africa. Speaking just for me, I would like Tanzania on the East Coast if I had to choose a spot to settle. Julius Nyerere is an intelligent leader who identifies with the Eastern world. The country is developing fast and has unlimited potential in mining, agriculture, and light industry. Its problem, as with all the African states, is the absence of capital to expand the economy at a rate which will realize the rising expectations of the people and close the gap with the Western world. Tanzania has invited the Eastern societies to help them instead of the U.S. and Western Europe, so they will be better off. China charges no interest on loans. When the Chinese set up a factory, they hire Africans and train African managers and leave. The U.S. is motivated by the profit and loss thing. They leave U.S. managers and claim 90% of the gross as their just share of the profits. They say it's their reward for helping to develop the country. Some African leaders go for this. Julius does not. Does it seem stupid of China to lend without interest and build without taking over or capitalizing? Must be love. Lester. March 28th, 1968. Dear Robert, I stay very busy these days. I have accepted a job on the tier, our floor, passing out food and cleaning up. Good for my record and keeps me active. What do you think of Jomo? He was on his job during those years. He ranks among the top 3 or 4 guerrilla tacticians in the world. I speak of this new face that war has taken on, the war of the poor man. He was in the vanguard of the Afro-Asian liberation effort once. It is regrettable, however, that today we have to report that he no longer cooperates with the general movement to which he owes his success. He has gone on record as saying he wants no part of any more revolutions. What can we think of a man who withdraws before the battle is fully won? This man has abandoned his old comrades and left the less fortunate to fend for themselves. The peoples of Southern Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America could use his cooperation, his support, just as he once was in need of support. Faint hearts never win decisive battles. Take care of yourself. Lester. April 11th, 1968. Dear Robert, MLK organized his thoughts much in the same manner as you have organized yours. If you really knew and fully understood his platform, you would never have expressed such sentiments as you did in your last letter. I am sure you are acquainted with the fact that he was opposed to violence and war. He was indeed a devout pacifist. It is very odd, almost unbelievable, that so violent and tumultuous a setting as this can still produce such men. He was out of place, out of season, too naive, too innocent, too cultured, too civil for these times. This is why his end was so predictable. Violence in its various forms he opposed, but this does not mean that he was passive. He knew that nature allows no such imbalances to exist for long. He was perceptive enough to see that the men of color across the world were on the march, and their examples would soon influence these in the U.S. to also stand up and stop trembling. So he attempted to direct the emotions and the movement in general along lines that he thought best suited to our unique situation. Nonviolent civil disobedience, political and economic in character. I was beginning to warm somewhat to him because of his new ideas concerning U.S. foreign wars against colored peoples. I am certain that he was sincere in his stated purpose to, quote, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, comfort those in prisons, and trying to love somebody, end quote. I really never disliked him as a man. As a man, I accorded him the respect that his sincerity deserved. It is just as a leader of black thought that I disagreed with him. The concept of non-violence is a false ideal. It presupposes the existence of compassion and a sense of justice on the part of one's adversary. When this adversary has everything to lose and nothing to gain by exercising justice and compassion, his reaction can only be negative. The symbol of the male here in North America has always been the gun, the knife, the club. Violence is extolled at every exchange. The TV, the motion pictures, the bestseller lists. The newspapers that sell best are those that carry the boldest, bloodiest headlines and most sports coverage. To die for king and country is to die a hero. The Kings, Wilkinses, and Youngs exhort us in King's words to, quote, put away your knives, put away your arms, and clothe yourselves in the breastplate of righteousness, end quote, and, quote, turn the other cheek to prove our capacity to endure, to love, end quote. Well, that is good for them perhaps, but I most certainly need both sides of my head. George. April 22nd, 1968. Dear Robert, it was good seeing you. A bit exasperating, but still good to see you. Re-examine this point. If a government truly reflected the wishes of the people, if it truly represented a fair cross-section of the populace, it would follow that if the means of production and distribution were placed in the hands of the government, they would be controlled by the people. The central point is that the government must truly be representative. All important positions must be elective, and a man's position within the governing body must be solely dependent upon meritorious conduct of the state's business. Nationalization is the only answer to the problems of the modern industrial state. Take care of yourself. George. April 26, 1968. Dear Mother, I was looking for you last weekend. Robert had said he was going to bring you. I hope you are well. Robert indicates that you two very seldom see anything in the same light anymore. He also indicates that he doesn't understand why. He comes here thinking to give me solace and purpose. Purpose I have, solace I don't require. But appears to be more upset with the state of his domestic affairs than I am with my problems here. This is not to say that I do not enjoy his visits. It is good to have a little relief from this cell, but it seems to me that Robert may be coming apart, and I hate to witness it. He has attempted a breakout recently from long years of repression and backwardness, but the combination of non-cooperation from you and his daughters, and the plain fact that he doesn't understand the changes that are taking place around him, has placed a strain on his nervous equipment that may soon prove to be too much for him. He doesn't have much confidence in himself or in us as a people yet. His whole mentality, all of his attitudes are built around the transparent little platitudes and trite cliches that one reads and hears on the mass news media and other thought control facilities. He stated in the presence of some of his black co-workers that, quote, he was glad that troublemaker King got killed, end quote. He almost had to fight the guys. Now, what black would say something like that? It sounds like something that one of the white knights of the KKK would say. Years ago, Robert would have said nothing and had no opinion whatever to offer. But now that he has broken out and is trying to get into the mainstream with an opinion, he is all mixed up. I can understand that after such an experience on the job with his peers, he would certainly not want to get bullied by his women when he got home. I didn't agree with any of King's tactics, but he certainly caused no one any trouble, other than a few white perhaps. And I don't think I mind that too much. Robert will change, adapt in time if we help him along, and are subtle with our criticism and advice, and respect his wish to be the dominant male. He has that coming. It's hard working for these folks. I heard about your work on the kitchen. That's heavy work. Take care that you don't strain or break yourself. Why isn't John doing that for you? Take care of yourself. George. April 30th, 1968. Dear Robert, everything is normal here so far. The transfer is off. I'll be here for a while yet. They wanted to send me to Soledad Adjustment Center, but I asked them not to. There are more aimless adolescence types there than here. I wouldn't mind going to California Men's Colony or someplace like that, but I have never been afforded anything that would be an improvement over this place. Well, anything would be an improvement, but not enough to matter. All reading material is coming in right on time except Ramparts and Avant-Garde. No Ramparts for April yet. I believe the government may have smashed them. May end up on that little boat after all. I feel myself becoming impatient with people in general. Take care of yourself. George. May 4th, 1968. Dear Mother, you are correct in all that you say about the problems of men and responsibility, and about the hangers-on and the foot-draggers, the failures and the failing, the myopic tendencies to squander time and energy in counterproductive efforts. At times, I become so depressed seeing it that I feel justified in deciding to release myself from my responsibility and just take off when I get home with you people in tow to some other part of the world where blacks have already come into their own, with an ocean or two between us and this place. But this feeling never lasts long, mainly because I understand why many of us react as we do. And I said react. Our responses to the social stimuli, and in our case in this country, they assert themselves as a challenge, must necessarily be negative when we consider that blacks in the U.S. have been subjected to the most thorough brainwashing of any people in history. Isolated as we were, or are, from our land, our roots, and our institutions, no group of men have been so thoroughly terrorized, dehumanized, and divested of those things that from birth make men strong. Regarding this domestic issue, I must be the first to admit that I see that the black family unit is in ruins. It is our first and basic weakness. This fact may contribute much to our difficulty in uniting as a people. But for every effect there is a cause. If we are to understand and heal these effects, we must understand the causes. To say that the black family unit is slowly eroding because of pressures from without, poverty and social injustice, and from within, negative response to crisis situation, is to completely mistake the depth of the issue. There are three historical factors that have produced the present state of chaos on the family level of our black society. First, the family unit was destroyed during chattel slavery. Men had the sense of family responsibility trained out of them. Second, our culture, institutions, and customs upon which unity depends and without which cohesiveness can never exist were destroyed and never replaced. The best we could do was ape the Ofe and cling to a kind of subculture that manifests itself today in the hideous notion that if we educate ourselves properly, think the right thoughts, read the right books, say the right things, and do exactly that which is expected of us, we can then be as good as white people. Third, our change in status from an article of movable property to untrained misfits on the labor market was not, as most think, a change to freedom from slavery, but merely to a different kind of slavery. Take care of yourself. George. May 15th, 1968. Dear Robert, it is good that you can afford a new car, since you have taken up the responsibility of managing the household expenditures. I see you have a little more to spend on what the Yankees call discretionary spending, money above what is needed to provide the basic survival materials. You sound like a high school civics textbook with that thing about free speech and free press. You couldn't believe stuff like that. Freedom of the press is for those who own one. Even they are kept in line by economic pressure from above. Very little of the repression is done overtly, my friend. You cannot see a tree's roots all the time, but because one cannot see them does not mean that they do not exist. The tree couldn't stand without them. Take care of yourself. George. May 16th, 1968. Dear Robert, the silent treatment is counterproductive. Guile, craft, and gentle persuasion on what's happening. When guile fails, then force must be used. Guile only fails when the person one is dealing with is smarter. Men must either be cajoled or crushed, depending on the circumstances. But with women, I can't see any reason why craft shouldn't always suffice. These institutional committees are strictly local and inconsequential. They have no fixed number of seats, no fixed personnel. They are governed by caprice. All decisions are arbitrary. I have never received the benefit of the doubt. I never get a break, as you well know, from the fact of these 8 years. But don't let me start complaining. As a defense, I never expect anything, never form attachments for material things, and refuse to be punished or allow my thoughts to be disorganized by anything that happens to me here. So you can uncross your fingers and put your fears for me on that score to rest. Nothing can upset the logical processes of my mind. No amount of hunger, neglect, cold, pain, discomfort, or terrorism. Well, take care of yourself. George. June 6th, 1968. Dear Robert, it was good to see you folks. I hope you got back safely. You know they cut our visiting time short. I snapped to it when I got back to my cell block and noticed how early it was. It was not crowded in there either, from what I can recall. It seems at first sight that Georgia has adjusted her attitudes to conform somewhat more closely with reality. That is wonderful. It is surely past time for all of us to stand up and stop trembling, grab the bull by the horns, and ride him till his neck snaps. The events of the last 2 days have left me in a most exuberant frame of mind. I haven't felt so good since the first of the year and the time of the Tet Offensive. John is an admirable man-child. You sired a man without question. I just know that you are training him to be a benefit and a credit to his kind, and to act out of his historical, obligatory duty. I know you are teaching him to love just us and protecting him from this alien ideology. I am certain that you are doing this since you remember clearly the failure of your father and his father, and so on as far back as it goes. Take care of yourself. George. June 14th, 1968. Dear Mother, try to remember how you felt at the most depressing moment of your life. The moment of your deepest dejection. You no doubt have had many. That is how I feel all the time, no matter what my level of consciousness may be, asleep, awake, in between. The thing is there and it keeps me moving, pins my eye to the ball, uptight, 24 hours a day. Our general situation and mind at present especially, the inadequate response, the absence of genuine remedial thought and action, these are why I am as I am. I had a letter from Robert this morning professing a heartfelt sorrow at the passing on of one of our strongest enemies. A slick-tongued, opportunistic, demagogic falsifier. What a prodigal waste of affection, especially when we consider that Robert felt only relief at the time of the last political kill, M.L. King. I can't reach Robert. He has a natural slave mentality like so many other black men of his generation. I understand why the mindless pursue the favor and affection of an insensitive and implacable opponent, but I cannot understand why they insist on planting those ideals in the minds of their sons. They go through life discovering that this enemy cannot be appeased, that he is relentless, callous beyond repair, dedicated to personal financial success, heedless to its cost in human suffering. Yet when the sun comes along, instead of acting upon these discoveries in a positive way, they lie, pretend, defend their inaction and collaboration, head down, shoulders bent, nose stained brown. I tolerate Robert because he stuck with us, or you, pretty faithfully. No small qualifier when one looks around at other families in the black community. But he has to go through many a change before I can really accept him. It may be too late for us to establish a relationship conducive to the remedying of our physical and material problems. I hope not. As I have stated before, you can help us both. Just as those regressive ideals were sneaked into his consciousness, so we can sneak some progressive ones in. Propaganda works both ways. But one must be subtle. He is sensitive about being bossed. By blacks, anyway. I have wanted to write this letter for 2 weeks now, but I have been preoccupied. I wanted to enlarge upon some of the things we discussed when you were here. First, all men want to own things, to possess material goods, to make themselves comfortable today, and to secure themselves against the unpredictable tomorrows. This is self-preservation, a natural thing found in all animals. It is only latent in some men, but it is still there all the same. When this instinct works on a man without his full understanding, he does radical things. Now read carefully, Georgia. When the peasant revolts, the student demonstrates, the slum dweller riots, the robber robs, he is reacting to a feeling of insecurity, an atavistic throwback to the territorial imperative, a reaction to the fact that he has lost control of the circumstances surrounding his life. Whether he knows it or not, it is all the same. This system, its economics, its politics, were formed around an age that is past. It was inadequate even then. Men can no longer stake out land or section off a part of the earth and say to themselves, quote, I will use this as a guarantee, end quote, mainly because of the monopolistic stranglehold of those who have already established themselves and who pretend to know what is best for the rest of the world. Wealth is land. By having only labor without land and its potential products, we lose independence. We must sell our labor. Then, because of today's specialization and complicated division of labor, it follows that the only way man's natural urges and the modern industrial society can be brought into agreement is by all people possessing everything in common through a representative government. Only in this way can all men satisfy the ungovernable urge to secure things and control their existence. George. June 29th, 1968. Dear Georgia, I'll be out of here soon, perhaps in 8 or 9 months. I'll have 18 months clean when I go to the board in December. You know that I have my time in. That's what they want, time and clean conduct. It is always a job getting along with our friends and relatives. Establishing lasting and mutually rewarding relationships always calls for delicacy, sensitivity, and mainly suppression of the ego. One simply cannot say the first thing that comes to mind with no regard for the next person's ego problem. If I constantly say or do things that make the next person feel as if I am challenging his person, his capacity to reason, his standing as an individual, how can I ever hope to relate with him? People the world over are not the same, but those that we meet here in the U.S. are generally of a single type. By and large, they are all fools, intellectual non-persons, emotional half-wits. Status symbols, supervisory positions, and petty power motivate their every act. Personal, individual, financial success at any price is their social ethic, the only real standard upon which their conduct is built. For us blacks in particular, this is a nightmare proposition. When this standard, this criteria for the measurement of individual merit and worth in this society is applied to us, measured against our standing or holdings, we cannot help but come out with a very low opinion of ourselves. From the womb to the tomb, this plays on our minds. We are not worth more than the amount of capital we can raise. That is why you see blacks pretending to be doing all right. That is why a black man will buy a new car, status symbol, before he will buy food for his child or clothes for his wife. And again, with blacks, this whole thing goes even deeper. No man or group of men have been more denuded of their self-respect. None in history have been more terrorized, suppressed, repressed, and denied male expression than the U.S. black. This is what you are up against in relating to Robert. As I said before, he is going through a breakout. He is trying to get back. He wants to express himself after years of being a vegetable. As with most of the men of our community, he is just starting to feel his strength now. But soon this will build into a rage. And when I rage unabounding. Don't interfere with that thing. You should have never objected to the social club. You caused him to transfer just a bit more of the subconscious disregard he has for our enemies onto you. John's real problems can be solved only through community action, a massive, total, mutual effort. We are not surviving and cannot survive as individuals or as family units. We must get together. And then too, what can Robert give John in his present state of mental development? He can only benefit from contact with people he might learn from. He must first learn what to give and how to give it to John before he can help him. Just spending some time with him is nothing. I don't think you handled that right. You should have offered to help his organization, perhaps even participate to some extent. Don't be backward. George. August 9th, 1968. Dear Mother, it was good for me to see you again. I also have your letter here before me. I commented to Robert last week that you seem to have gone through many changes these last few years. That's what life is all about, growth and change. You will at least listen. Few people are so endowed. I feel much better as the result of your visit. Please try to come more often, or at least when Robert comes. I understand that you people have never had any exposure to these things that interest me, and I know that everyone cannot be alike. But I also know that if we are to relate to each other, work together, build together on the basic things, we must agree. I agree with many of the things you say. I concur with any rational and constructive judgment or assessment you may make, as long as it is intended to forward our thing. No transfer for me, they turned it down. No relief in my ordeal. 24 hours a day in this cell. I've been in here for over 18 months now. In prison 8 years next month. I've forgotten what it was that earned me this. George. August 17th, 1968. Dear Mother, it can all be reduced to the simple fact that we want you to be yourself, secure within your reality. Why should my woman have to follow someone else's criteria of right and wrong, beauty and ugliness? Please believe me, Mama. The truly ugly thing is the pretending, faking it, imitating, monkey see, monkey do adoration of the repulsive. On close examination, what you are saying is that black women standing naked and natural are ugly or less than beautiful. From this nakedness and natural posture, the only way for her to remotely resemble anything beautiful is to bleach and straighten her hair, and hang her limbs with clothing designed in Paris, London, the US, and other parts of the barbarian world. For you, there is only this one standard of beauty, the Western standard. I revolt against this absurdity. I understand that this is all you have ever known. I allow for this, but you must be able to see by now that this model of perfection you have subscribed to in the past is no longer the fad. Black is back. I'm going to fulfill my role as the man, even if it kills me. I will provide the material goods and protect my family with every ounce of energy and resource that I can call up. The woman's role, though, will go unfulfilled because you folks don't seem to be able to change or reestablish the values and cultural entities of our antecedents. Reality is the key. In order for you to be intelligent, as you stated, you must like Western music, clothes, food, architecture, Western education, religious superstition, pseudo-philosophy, and Western ideals. St. Augustine, what kind of example is that? The reality is that we are a caste at the bottom of a class society. The only group that has built-in factors, physical characteristics, that prohibit any form of socio-economic mobility. We are the totally disenfranchised, the whipping boy, the scapegoat, the floor mat of the nation. I'm not so foolish that I cannot detect the fact that I am hated, especially when it is obvious. At least, the obvious does not escape me. To clarify, however, let me state that some blacks are liked. I see that every day. But I am not of this kith. They hate me. I don't find this at all uncomfortable because I have some prerogatives. I would be doing something wrong if they liked me. Do you understand? I don't want anyone to accept me. As an individual, I don't worry about my future. I know my ideals will prevail, so I don't worry about that. They can't harm me because the reality is that I have nothing to lose but my chains. It is clear that they are not going to give me a chance. You were right. That is exactly what they fear. Just because I want to be my black self, mentally healthy, and because I look anyone who addresses me in the eye, they feel that I may start a riot any time. I've stopped more trouble here than any other black in the system. George. December 3rd, 1968. Dear Mother, I'm supposed to be going to Soledad again any time now. It is a much better place than this. Remember when you came to see me while I was there before? We sat around a table in easy chairs by ourselves. How have you been? Healthy and wise, I hope. No noticeable change here except for the prospect of my transfer and a cold that has me doubled over all day coughing. Penelope asked me to send her my package approval form so she could take care of me. I sent it and told her that she must send the stuff right away so that I will get it on the very first day packages are allowed, to avoid any possible mix-up due to the transfer. Remember in 1962 when I transferred here in December? There was such a mix-up that I got nothing you sent. I can't say just what the problem is. We all seem to be in the grip of some terrible quandary. Our enemies have so confused us that we seem to have been rendered incapable of the smallest responsibility. I see this same irresponsibility in every exchange with my kinsmen here. Irresponsibility, or mediocrity at best, disloyalty, self-hatred, cowardice, competition between themselves, resentment of any who may have excelled in anything, heads bowed, knees bent to some man or some stupid idea of a god. I've stopped saying anything at all. I haven't uttered a word in 2 months. I refuse to even acknowledge a greeting with anything larger than a raising of the head. One step forward and three backward. Where are we going? George. December 22nd, 1968. Dear Mother, I probably won't leave here until next month. They are sending me to the board here. It meets the 30th and 31st day of December and the 2nd and 3rd of January. I'm doing all right and have some very efficient earplugs to help me preserve my sanity. Have you any theories why blacks talk so much and are so loud? A Chinaman told me once that blacks were the oldest and finest people on earth. Quote, but one thing wrong, talky, talky, talky. End quote. Wish the best for you, the best of everything this year. May be in a position to help work something out before this one's gone. Take care. George. April 14th, 1969. Dear John, black culture is a monumental subject that covers countless years. The first man, and consequently the first culture, was black. You can't expect much coverage of so large a subject in 9,000 words. I will, however, write an essay that starts with the beginnings and touches on all that is important, with a brief resume on the black subculture on the present-day United States. You can make your own bench cheap. Buy or find or take from someone a 6-foot by 15-inch board, rather thick and heavy, say 2 inches at least. Tack on some old surplus army blankets and that's it. You then simply lay your board on top of 3 wooden horses, old wooden milk crates, or any strong or reinforced wood boxes, or stretch it between 2 chairs. Leave it unattached, however, because that way you can use it for incline presses by leaning it against a wall or letting it rest one end on the ground, one on your box or chair. I'll get started on the other thing now. Why did Georgia take your books? Sounds pretty bad for her. I gather she wasn't serious about the things she said when she was here last. George. June 12th, 1969. Dear Mother, final results. Denied. 1 year. Go back to the board. Next, June 1970. George. June 28th, 1969. Dear John, it's good in many ways that you will now be able to drive. Perhaps you'll be able to get up here to see me more often. I am well and working hard, 4 hours a day on exercises. Mix your theoretical reading with some practical technology, that aspect of chemistry that will be useful to us, perhaps electronics as well. Be careful and learn fast how to handle the automobile. Robert is most impressed. If you remain calm, if you don't let him think you are excitable under the strain of heavy traffic, you will be able to convince him that you are ready to go out on your own sooner. Driving that 69 should be easy. Take it easy. George. August 17th, 1969. Dear John, the usual here. Each day comes and goes like the one before. This little joke isn't funny any longer. I add 5 words to my vocabulary every day. 5 new ones right after breakfast each morning when I have 45 minutes to kill. It's not enough time for anything else, and since I don't want to waste any time, I work on words. It is by words that we convey our thoughts and bend people to our will. If you must have a job, though I can't see why you want to work for someone if you don't absolutely have to, try this. Go to some business concern where the guy who runs it doesn't employ too many people and watches all of them closely. Then just start working for nothing. Don't say anything to anyone but the boss. Tell him what your name is and that you need a job. Then start working in spite of his reply. Of course, you work hard. Do you get it? In 2 days, 3 at the most, you'll have him bent to your will. You may have to work for nothing the first day or two. In fact, it is best to refuse the first day's offering if he breaks that soon. You have to be sure of yourself, I mean. In order to pressure a man, you must be a better man than he. You can't let embarrassment or shyness stand in your way. These two things must be thoroughly and completely removed from your character. Loading trucks in a junkyard where the work is hard, garages, warehouses, etc. These are places to consider. Don't try anything that requires skilled labor. You'll mess up someone's stock. How are your eyes? Have you had them checked? We all have bad eyes. Mine seem to be getting worse. I hope not. I can see very well at a distance, but cannot focus well on close objects without the glasses. Find out for me if Georgia sent the shoes and other stuff. If she did, I didn't get them for some reason, and I will investigate. Give her my love. Send me a sexy picture of the lady that you met, like I told you last week. Let her oldest kid take the picture with you and her in it. I want visual proof that you did take care of business. When I was 16, I had one that was 28 and a mother 4 times. I was good to her, no beatings like her other men had done. I wouldn't accept any money from her or eat her kids' food. I took her to places where she could show me off, most of the time to places that cost nothing. I had money, but I looked so young that I couldn't get into places that adults went into. Take care of yourself, George. September 9th, 1969. Dear John, doing no good here. It is looking no better, but at least I have developed no new problems. What do you think of your old man? Were you listening when he told me that those guys, on his job call him everything under the sun? He pretends that he is proud of his self-control. I believe he actually has twisted his thinking to consider himself a better man. Quote, now that he can take it. End quote. A lot of us colored folk are like that. In fact, he is the majority. That is why we are the floor mat of the world. Because we can take it. Robert is a good brother on an individual, personal, brother-to-brother basis. But you must reject his philosophy. The credo of the slave, the self-destructive, self-perpetuating doctrine of the menial, the woodcutter, the water boy, the groom, the employee, the flunky's flunky, the abased. However, the rejection should be a silent one. There is no chance of changing Robert, so he must be accepted as is and protected as much as is possible. There are those among us, we must admit, who cannot take any sizable amount of freedom. They are in the majority. You cannot relate to them with ideals. They have fallen beyond caring about ideals. The only thing that will make them move is a push. No explanation, just a shove. You are concerned about working, having money, living better, etc. I have given you several leads, but it seems that none fit your character and disposition. I hope that you at least tried. That last thing I mentioned to you last Monday may be just a ticket. See a brother named E. He can help you get that kind of work. You have your driver's license now, so there should be no problems. But if there are, you should be old enough and prepared to handle them now. If I am wrong, then you will never be ready. Well, take care of yourself and write me like I asked you to. George. September 15th, 1969. Dear John, got your letter today. On the job thing, it is up to you. I think you made a wise choice. However, if you can stick with it, there will be plenty of lures at the school. Soft, warm, smooth lures. When do you start back? And what years are you in? This should be your last year, isn't it? I'm just drifting now, doing a lot of reading, waiting for my shoulder to get together. It is a little better. Things are awful tight here. Everyone tense. I'm just watching them and waiting. Take care. George. September 25th, 1969. Dear John, Robert told me that you were driving the new automobile to school. If that's right, you're not doing too bad. Do you use it at school and drive home too? But he also mentioned that if you didn't show improvements in things of a scholastic nature, he would be very disappointed. I'm thinking that he feels a lot for you. He really does, I know. He simply doesn't know how to relate to you. When I was young, I felt that Robert didn't care for me very much because he wouldn't take me anywhere or ever talk to me in anything less than a shout. Mama used to talk him into beating me up just for leaving the house to play ball or talk with my peers. I mean real beating. Belts, table legs, fists, etc. But what I didn't notice was that he was feeding me, and that whenever I got into a bind with the local representatives of the oppressors, police, he would always be there to help me. Always. No matter what I had done or how much he hated what I had done. Life has been one long string of disappointments for Robert. It wouldn't be good to just take lightly his wishes to see you become more aggressive in your development. It isn't necessary to disappoint him. You can satisfy him, help yourself, and serve the cause of black self-determination by picking yourself up and taking Chairman Mao's great leap forward. I hope you are involved in the academic program at your school, but knowing what I know about this country's schooling methods, they are not really directing you to any specialized line of study. They have not tried to ascertain what fits your character and disposition and to direct you accordingly. So you must do this yourself. Decide now what you would like to specialize in. One thing that you will drive at. Do you get it? Decide now. There are several things that we as a group, a revolutionary group, need badly. Chemists, electronic engineers, surgeons, etc. Choose one and give it special attention at a certain time each day. Establish a certain time to give over to your specialty and let Robert know indirectly what you are doing. Then it only remains for you to get your A's on the little simple, unnecessary subjects that the school requires. This is no real problem. It can be accomplished with just a little attention and study. But you must now start on your specialty, the thing you plan to carry through this war of life. You must specialize in something. Just let it be something that will help the war effort. George. October 17th, 1969. Dear Mother, I hope that all is normal there with you. John told me about the H deal. I didn't know it was that bad. How will we ever make it back from here? We all seem to have fallen from glory in the uttermost way. I'm sure we will simply have to redouble our efforts to forgive, understand, to rebuild the bridges between us. We must attempt to comprehend fully just how these bridges came to be destroyed. There is no other recourse. We must of ourselves, by ourselves, recognize the roots of our illness and do all that we can to extricate ourselves from this mess. Tell Penny that I love her no matter what. We'll agree on the essentials anyway. Tell her that I may not be able to write for a while. Explain this to Robert too. A little trouble here for me, and this may be the last envelope and the last time that I'll be able to borrow a pencil, for a while anyway. But I'll attempt to stay in touch. I've done nothing. It may work out alright, but then I have no way of knowing for sure. They sweep in and sweep me away to a little closed cell in a closed wing of the prison without any explanation. I don't have any of my personal property. Forget the phonograph and records. I won't be allowed to have them. I didn't really want them anyway. I'm going to send the typewriter home first chance I get also. What's happening now is what I tried to explain to you several months ago. They know that in the year between board appearances, anything can be made to happen. But at least I am alone in here. I don't have to be bothered with anyone, and someone who knew me before someone else has sent me something to read. I have books and toilet paper. I'll be alright. I'll write again when I can. Relay to Penny that no effort towards self-determination is futile. It is one of the things that men just cannot do without. Without it, life loses its value. Love, George. November 7th, 1969. Dear John, I know what happened concerning your letter. It was too thick. You sent too much. That is all right, however. I get what I want one way or the other and do what I want in the end. The fools are awfully presumptuous to think they can dictate my every action. That is good about the chemistry. I can't report too much progress. I'm holding on, however. How are the honeymooners getting along these days? You know that they are much too old to relate the way they do. Take care, George. November 13th, 1969. Dear John, I'm sending you these 2 package slips because you can explain to the folks there and see that it is taken care of better than anyone else. First, I want them sent the very first day of December. They are special Christmas packages, the only kind I can receive, and I don't want to wait for them until Christmas, you understand? So that means that you must explain to them to get the stuff together now and put it into 2 packages and use the reverse side of the slip as an address form. It should be glued to the outside of the package and addressed to me here as soon as December 1st gets here. The important items are cigarettes. I want 3 cartons in each box, 4 pounds of nuts in each box, walnuts and Brazil nuts only, the full quota of cigars, 150 in each box, and finally the salami, 2 pounds, 1 in each box. It must be the type that will keep without refrigeration for a while. The rest of that stuff is unimportant. Impress upon them now not to delay past December 1st. It should be mailed. You understand, I hope. Give everyone my regards. Take care, George. November 27th, 1969. Dear John, I'm doing all right here, I guess, hanging on. Heard you were going to medical school. What happened to the chemistry? They called me up to classification last week. Said they were considering sending me back to San Quentin. They are supposed to need the space here for something, and I wasn't doing well enough. They said if I improved a great deal, it is possible that in 4 or 5 years, I might be considered for Chino, the prison for honor inmates. Let me know now and then how you are. Take care, George. December 5th, 1969. Dear Mother, the packages came in all right. They were opened in my presence, so there was no chance for foul play. Thanks, you're a good girl. Couldn't possibly get along without you folks. I hope I can justify your faith in me in some big way before long. John is a wonderful man-child. You should be quite content with him. The apathy is not permanent. I love him, love him, love him. He is a great deal ahead of the average black his age, a lot smarter than I was. I hope he can avoid the many traps they have set up for him. Send me some photos of everyone, when you get together over the holidays. Take care. Love, George. December 21st, 1969. Dear John, Marsha is a sweet, sensitive sister. I want you to see her and represent me in my absence. You know what that means. Show no weakness of any kind. Present the strong, unapproachable, serious, intelligent, big brother side of your character. The new black man in his highest revolutionary form. Look out for her. Try to stabilize her. She is confused. She is the sister of one of my best friends. So bust your heart for her. If she has personal enemies, smash them. Call her in the evening and read to her from Mao or Fanon. George. December 21st, 1969. Dear John, just got your letter. Good to hear from you. And hope you are still alive. For the 357th time, let me advise you to take all threats seriously. If you would firmly grasp the depth of the sickness caused in some men's minds by this environment, I will never have to relate this to you but once. When a sucker gets so foolish as to warn you in advance that he is going to kill you, the next sound he utters should come through swollen lips. 2 people I want you to see for me. It is important. See Guy and find out if he got a regular institution correspondence form to fill out and return with the letter I sent him. I have reason to believe that these people did not send him the form so that he can become a regular on my mailing list. Also dress yourself up and see Marsha one evening or weekend. She works in the daytime. Also ask her if she got the form to fill out and return when she got my letter. Ask her if she returned it yet, and explain that we will not be allowed to exchange letters if she has not returned the form. I think these people neglected to even send one, since they want to keep me isolated. Tell Marsha that I got her letter of December 15th and I will try to answer. If she doesn't hear from me, it will be due to the hang-up in getting those forms out of here to her and back from her. Tell her that Tony is doing well. You can phone first to tell her you are coming or make an appointment, but I'd rather you see her in person to relate the messages. Do this right away and let me know what's happening. I don't know what to tell you about that school thing. I know it is boring, listening to those idiots and falsifiers 7 or 8 hours a day, but it's the best way until you are ready to revolt. Just don't mistake any of the lies for the truth. Robert will lie to you if he thinks it will help you to survive. He has been surviving on one for half a century. Take care. George. December 25th, 1969. Dear Mother, I'm warm, well, fed, get plenty of rest, plenty of exercise. I really can't complain, especially since I don't expect any more. Everyone got packages from home and we shared everything. It was just like down on the commune. I have gained 10 pounds at least. Hope you are feeling better, and I hope also that this next year will bring you some solace. I wish you the best, Mama. Take care of yourself. George. December 28th, 1969. Dear John, received your letter. You said nothing about Marsha. See if you can do anything for her. When I was your age, boy, I had a couple of women her age, and with 2 and 3 children each. But you treat her good. You're supposed to be representing me, meaning that you are to be strong, intellectual, watchful, serious, unapproachable. I like her, and she is the sister of one of my best friends. I'm supposed to be getting out any time now, she thinks. I want her to see you, the man-child, so that she would have a better idea of what the man is like. Forget that westernized backward stuff about God. I curse God. The whole idea of a benevolent supreme being is the product of a tortured, demented mind. It is a labored, mindless attempt to explain away ignorance, a tool to keep people of low mentality and no means of production in line. How could there be a benevolent Superman controlling a world like this? He would have to be malevolent, not benevolent. Look around you. Evil rules supreme. God would be my enemy. The theory of a good, just God is a false idea. a thing for imbeciles and old women, and of course, Negroes. It's a relic of the past, when men made words and mindless defenses for such things as sea serpents, magic, and flat earths. Strength comes from knowledge, knowing who you are, where you want to go, what you want, knowing and accepting that you are alone on this spinning, tumbling world. No one can crawl into your mind and help you out. I'm your brother and I'm with you, come what may, and against anything or anybody in the universe that is against you. You'll meet women and they will say they are with you, but you'll still be alone, with your pain, discomfort, illness, elation, courage, pride, death. You don't want anyone to crawl into your head with you, do you? If there were a God or anyone else reading some of my thoughts, I would be uncomfortable in the extreme. Strength is being able to control yourself and your total environment. Yourself first, however. Take care of yourself. George. Friday, February 13th, 1970. Mrs. Faye Stender, Attorney at Law. Dear Mrs. Stender, this is to confirm your letter of February 11th. I had just heard of Judge Wallenberg's move. The next time you come to see me, push the idea of removing my restraints. It will be interesting to note their reaction. You know those things are placed upon me whenever I leave my cell area. He reaches through the bars to place them upon me. The Animal Farm effect is complete. Sunday, the day after tomorrow, I am supposed to be released from isolation. No one is supposed to do more than 29 days down here. I'll then be able to read my newspapers and weekly periodicals, smoke, and sleep in a bed. However, I will remain separated from the general population, in jail within the jail, probably on maximum security. This does not bother me any longer. Of the 10 years I have done, 7 of them have been in close confinement. I read, exercise, and write. Sometimes I'll daydream. I said that it doesn't bother me any longer, but what I meant is that since I am in jail, which part of the jail I'm in doesn't matter. Your wishes of cheer and hope are well received. Hope and I are old friends. Thanks, and let me know if you can do anything with the novel idea. Sincerely, George L. Jackson. Thursday, February 26, 1970. Dear Faye, you are aware that I want to read the transcript of grand jury testimony. All 3 of us would like to go over it. Since we are living so close together down here, 1 copy would be enough for all 3 of us. I had a chance to read only parts of it on the 24th. Do you have any trouble reading my writing? It is the best I can do. If you are having trouble, however, I'll print. I'm warm. I never have liked to eat too much, so all is well with me here. I won't complain. I've never had much of a problem with the purely physical things, the weaknesses of the flesh. I never notice food. I get fat on what the average individual would starve on. Clothing? I prefer something dry and clean if it is readily available. I feel guilty when I sleep more than 3 hours a day. Where I am presently, the night light in front of my cell allows me to read or write as late as I wish. The cruelest aspect in the loss of one's freedom of movement is of course the necessity to repress the sex urge. But after 10 years, I have even learned to control my response to that stimulus. 1,000 fingertip push-ups a day. I probably have the world's record on push-ups completed. So, if they would reach me now, across my many barricades, it must be with a bullet and it must be final. The lash affects me for sure. If it failed to affect me at all, I would be guilty of using the tortured logic of my father's twisted mind, i.e., that this is the best of all possible worlds, or that this is the only country that provides flush toilets for all. It affects me, but not my physical parts. It shocks me somewhere behind the eyes, strains my instinct to survive. I know you are a busy woman, and it probably isn't proper for me to steal your attention with my ramblings. Take care. You have my regard. Sincerely, George L. Jackson. March 2nd, 1970. Dear Faye, we received a copy of the transcript today through the mail. It was John Clichette who actually received it. I also had a letter from my father. It was a long letter. Considering that he normally writes only a few lines, it seems that he is now prepared to accept the validity of the many charges I have long made against certain forms of organization, and specifically certain elements within the forms. I suspect that Georgia may have had something to do with it, just to make him feel better. Either way, it denotes the effects that trauma has had on people, especially people who are affected by little else. I am convinced that black people can never be influenced by ideology alone. The men have been too conditioned against it by violence, and they are afraid. The women think of themselves as too practical. They can be moved by one thing only: money, honey. However, I love them all just the same. I reason that with a continuous stream of shocks and the promise of spoils, they can eventually be induced to reach beyond their immediate surroundings. A guard said something nasty to one of my sisters last Tuesday. This may have been the catalyst with my father. He's a stranger to me, almost. I just got the letter in the book you want me to read. I see that you posted it on the 26th. Thanks, I'll get right on it. You have my regard. Please give my further regards to our friends. Sincerely, George L. Jackson. Thursday, March 5th, 1970. Dear friend Faye, I have started this 3 times. This first is in way of an apology, for I feel one is due you. At the close of today's proceedings, I left without as much as a look in your and John's direction. I'm afraid that you may mistake such behavior as the unfeeling and callous disregard of the slave. I hope I have trained all of the slave out of me. Neither would I have you feel for even a second that I could make any at all mental association between you and your people and those who stand in my way, simply because of the external resemblance, or let me say any external resemblance. I never have, even in the really bad moments, lost the ability to evaluate people one at a time, and never will. The only way I can explain the little thing that occurred this evening is with an explanation of that pain or shock that strikes me at times just behind the eyes. I don't understand it entirely myself. From early this morning, I carry the metal around. That vehicle they transport us in, which we ate lunch hands to side, is very cramped. And then, and most important, the attitude of the pig in the jury room when he came to take me back. I believe it first started bothering me then. The thing in my head. Campbell. Note. Campbell, the first judge assigned to the case. He later withdrew after the defense accused him of blatant expressions of racial prejudice. End of note. Again, ruling on. You see, someone failed before me, trembled and failed. My father, his father, leaving Campbell in a position to rule me out. I have very bad moments when I think of that, and of course it follows that I must think of my own failings. Can you understand that being a helpless type affects me deeply? You are a very intelligent, sensitive, and wonderful person, and the image you form wedged between me and who knows what fate, elates me in one sense and infuriates me in another. Why should I have to relate in exchange from such a position of weakness? It comes down on me at times. I am tortured by the vision of someone like myself standing at the bars of his cell 200 years from now, cursing me. Dereliction. So let me apologize for today because it bothers me. Let me take this occasion to apologize in advance for the seemingly crude responses you may detect from time to time. My sensibilities may be somewhat damaged. You can help me with this over the years to come. The tape. Note. A personal message from Huey P. Newton. End note. Left me feeling better than I have felt for 10, perhaps 15 years. I got the transcript and your letter upon my return this evening. When will I see you again? George. Monday, March 9th, 1970. Dear Faye, just heard something of Campbell's imminent retirement. It could occur at any time. Did you by the way take note of his statement in court the other day to the effect that he, quote, was also once an attorney and had defended unpopular causes? End quote. His words exactly. I don't know if it means anything or not, but the court reporter stated on his page that he recorded 1 to 48 pages of testimony, and we have only 1 to 46 pages. I guess you have learned by now that my mother loves to talk. She also at times will say what she is thinking without considering the effect it may have on the listener. She gets so carried away at times that I have been led to suspect that she may be affected with, well, she may be a mild hysteric. Not the sexual type, but the simple nervous type. She is, however, a sweet woman with plenty of guts. We have always related well. I am still among the living, so I guess I'm doing alright. The dentist denied me medical attention for the 10th time today. This morning, that is. We may have to discipline him soon. He apparently hasn't heard of my small but mighty mouthpiece. Please take care of yourself. You have my regard. George. P.S. I would like to know in advance when I will see you again. March 12th, 1970. Dear Faye, I received the copies of the motions, I think day before yesterday, the 10th. I have been slow to confirm. Sorry. It may seem strange, but I find my time, 21 hours awake, inadequate to meet all the needs. My metabolism is such that I need 4 hours of exercise to feel normal. Relax. This may just be the result of years of being in places like this, repressing things. You know we aren't even allowed to get angry. They took away my showering action. The half hour on the tier we were getting each day on Monday as a result of that contact with the dentist. No problem, however. There is a sink in my cell. Then I have my vocational work to do. I'll get lost in that for hours sometimes. Old slave trying to deal with his environment. In this connection, you may have to help me as you said you did with my friend. They are purposely making it difficult for me to get what I require. We can discuss it when I see you. Georgia was up to see me yesterday. The 3 mothers and 1 aunt all came together on the bus. I have your letter of the 10th here before me now. Thanks. You have my sincere regard. George. Sunday, March 22nd, 1970. My friend, the thought just occurred to me that you could challenge that guy B on his theory or statements concerning the possibilities of his secret witness being done in if he allows discovery. Note: at the prosecution's request, the The judge initially denied the defense the right of discovery on the grounds that it would jeopardize the lives of the inmate witnesses. End note. You see, every time a rat does get put away, the prison authorities always release a different reason for the attack. Never that he was an informer. Their purpose for always withholding the truth is that they don't want to discourage other potential rats, and the truth would aid the convict in the psychological war, con against cop. For it is their purpose to always keep us divided and fearful of trusting the next con. You are aware that it's always the goal of oppressive authority, those who govern without the consent of the governed, to keep their wards divided. They can maintain their control in no other way. Divide and rule, in its simplest form, is standard police procedure. They must always display their rats, boast of knowing all that goes on among us. When it's more than one person on some crime, they will be split up and each told that the other has confessed and implicated him, etc. You know the line. Inside the joint, it is the same, only much more intense. A sense of terror, betrayal, and insecurity prevails at all times. It flows outward from the captain's office. Divide and rule, divide and rule. An Italian in the syndicate at one time killed a Mexican in Folsom because the Mex suddenly started telling everyone not to trust someone who was supposed to be a rat. The pigs wanted to put him out of business, importing dope into the joint, and wanted to get the Mex killed. So they called the Mex into their office and showed him some phony papers indicating the guy was a rat. The Mex went for it and got killed. The guy was out of business in 4A for 4 years. 4A is Folsom's Adjustment Center. Terrible conflict going on all the time. At issue is who will run the joint, cops or cons, so it is never released that a police informer was killed for his mistake. I'm thinking that B will be at a loss to cite some cases in support of his fears that his witnesses will be harmed. We could state that he is playing on some concept of prison conditions that existed in 1920 but that do not exist today. Monday, March 23rd, 1970. I'm looking forward to a Good Friday. Never had one. I don't think Los Angeles is a good place for the trial. 15 floors above the ground, 1 million pigs. I was pushing you, rushing you, encircling you. Recall it. Occasioned the remark from you that, quote, I don't know you that well, end quote. Look, I do plead guilty, but with this explanation that I hope you'll accept the past months as say the equivalent of 5 or more years acquaintance. I encircle the people that I dig. There are only 2 types of people inhabiting my closet, friends and foes, the ones I accept, the ones I reject. I accepted you from the outset, and in spite of the bitter experience of these years, I still find it easy to trust people. I sensed from the start that we were of kindred spirits. I rejected others, as you recall, because there was no kinship of spirit there. To me, length of acquaintance matters very little. I've been living in the trenches where it's understood that it's us against them, hide and seek. They are always it, and getting caught means getting dusted. There never are many of us, so when I've met one in the past, it's been my method to encircle and push. But push isn't a good term. It implies that I've put someone in front of me and there can never be any room in front of me. Let me say encircle and pull. You can never fully understand. It is an existential impossibility for you to know how it's been with me. My character and disposition are such that my response to a crisis situation always leads to a situation more desperate than the one which provoked it. But that's the way I like it, and believe me, Faye, I probably wouldn't be alive now if it weren't my habit to overreact and look forward for the trouble that I know is coming. It probably didn't have to be this way for me. Other blacks have faced the same situation and have not been hurt too badly. I couldn't take it. I'll never be able to take it. A knife in the back, the nightstick, the gas chamber, death over a slow fire notwithstanding. And things just keep escalating from one desperate situation to a situation more desperate. And I seize the bull by the horns. I'll ride him till his neck breaks or until he pins me to the wall. Conflict, struggle, and preparation for more struggle. You can't understand how it is to have to watch everyone who gets within arm's reach, or when under the gun to have to stay close to something to crawl under. When you came to see me in February, my heart was cold as Antarctica. Tuesday, March 24th, 1970, early morning. I'm convinced that it is the psychopathic personality that searches out a uniform. There's little doubt of what's going on in that man's head who will voluntarily don any uniform. Do you know that in these prisons there is a very fierce competition between the pig who wears a uniform and the pig who works in the civilian dress? The uniform pigs call themselves the custody department, while the others go under the heading of care and treatment. It is the function of the uniform to hold a man here. This means they do the key work, the searching, the beating, killing. The individual with the tie and white shirt, really just another type of uniform, determines what we'll eat, what bullshit academic, and make what programs we'll have. He presides over the silly group therapy games that always end in fights or snitch contests. Oh, and he also makes out board reports. These two types of cops have been vying for control of the joints ever since the counselor breed came on the grounds. It was intended, of course, that these two groups of cops work together against the con. The rationale being, the more cons broken, the fewer will have to be killed. Consequently, less bad publicity for Department of Corrections political appointees and the political machine that appointed them. We killed that off by playing them against one another. If a uniform denied some small request, we would take it to the counselor. If he granted it, well, you can take it from there. But we would purposely ask the uniform, and in a way that made it certain he would refuse, for things we were sure the counselor would approve. Everyone connected with the power complex has made the outcome reasonably predictable. Chaos. You have a picture of them trying to divide us, manage us, denude us of individuality. When this maneuver fails, they arrange for one unmanageable to murder another unmanageable. At the same time, they can't agree among themselves on anything. Cretins with guns. You couldn't count the personality conflicts between cop plus cop, cop plus con plus con, usually fomented by some cop or some unnecessarily harsh living condition. You couldn't count these conflicts within IBM. And I mean the ones that transpire openly in, say, 1 hour's time. To be certain that you dig what I'm saying, I'll here admit that most of the people who come through these places are genuinely sick in one way or the other. Monsters, totally disorganized, twisted, disgusting epitomes of the parent monster. Those who aren't so upon their arrival will surely be so when they leave. No one escapes unscathed. An individual leaves his individuality and any pride he may have had behind these walls. When you first enter Chino, you're required to write a confession that will be placed right in the front of your jacket, under your picture and number. Note: Convict's record folder, log of all observations made by prison authorities. End note. Failure to write this confession means you go to the board. It means that you haven't taken the first step toward rehabilitation. All this is carefully explained to you in Chino. No confession, no parole. No one walks into the boardroom with his head up. This just isn't done. Guys lie to each other, but if a man gets a parole from these prisons, Faye, it means that he crawled into that room. Plus it means that he adopted the philosophical attitude toward shit in the face several times since his last board. Of the billions of conflicts and negative exchanges that take place in a year, the pigs choose which ones to pass over. The guy who earns a parole surrendered some face in the course of his stay here prior to the board. He walked away from some situation to save his body, at the cost of some part of his face. Read mind or pride or principle. No black will leave this place if he has any violence in his past, until they see that thing in his eyes, and you can't fake it. Resignation, defeat, it must be stamped clearly across the face. I've seen it. Eyes and black heads on the yard in San Quentin. Tracy, here. When I hit the yard in December 62, the brothers were lining up in the rain outside the protection of the shed that covers half of the upper yard. The Mexicans and whites had occupied all the lines under the shed. They would save long stretches of space for friends who never showed. So I had a picture on my first day there of the old slave, wet and trembling, while these other people relaxed with plenty of room under the shed. The brothers were mainly concerned with avoiding any trouble, since the pig invariably will shoot at the black face in a black and white altercation. Then it seems that blacks are much more concerned with establishing records that will lead to parole than whites or browns. I can't understand this since they have so much less to go home to. Earlier that same year, right here in Soledad, a white, nameless and faceless now, stabbed a brother with my surname because another brother called Butch beat him in one of those childish hand-to-hand disputes in the third-tier shower, the place for settling all disputes. The white inmate ran to his cell and asked for police protection. 200 blacks went after him with the intention of taking him from the police. Before it was over, there were only 4 of us against all the police in the county. A was there with me then, and 2 others. All the others, well, it started with a trembling of the lips, then a flaring of the nose, then that thing in the eyes. They sent us to San Quentin lockup for a month. Then J.C. and I were sent to Tracy, being the youngest of the 4. In Tracy, I did 6 months in adjustment center and was released to J Unit, the unit for unmanageables. Actually, they put me in this unit so that I would be close to some old enemies. A Mexican got killed in Soledad the year before. JC was picked up for it but later released. No one was ever convicted. In an honest case of mistaken identity, the Mexicans were supposed to be out to get me for it. I don't know where you got the tale of me attempting to integrate a movie area. It is a bit off. but it could have come from the events of that week I spent in J Unit. The blacks had to sit in the rear of the TV room on hard, armless, backless benches, while the Mexicans and whites sat up front on cushioned chairs and benches with backrests. Now check this. If one of those punks was in his cell or the shower, no one could sit in his seat, and certainly no black dare sit there. I'm serious. All of this taking place in front of a uniform and a large bold print sign in English and Spanish that read, "No saving of seats allowed." The first 3 nights I went in to catch the news, I stood in the front, looking down the room at the old slave for some sign of support. Old slave ignored me, eyes darting. He wants to go home. So do I, but I don't want to leave anything behind. Since my father didn't bequeath me much to begin with, any further losses leave me with nothing. I sat right in the front the 4th night, but I couldn't watch TV. I had to watch my back. The cop walked up and looked at me like I lost my mind. The cons tolerated me, 215 pounds and apparently a lunatic, for 3 days. On the 4th or 7th day out, night of sitting, they attacked me. They locked me up afterward and sent me back to San Quentin to stay. The 115, note, bad conduct report form, end note, was so clearly racist that I think they removed it in San Quentin. If you ever get the chance, see what reason they have in my jacket for the 1962 transfer to San Quentin from Tracy. So most of these inmates are sick, my friend, but who created the monster in them? They all stand right now as products of their environment. But in my humble opinion, the inmates of these places are not quite as, well, they aren't nearly as psychologically disturbed as the guy who calls himself a guard. They really could change roles without noticeable alteration in the qualitative factor of administrations. Any alteration would be positive. United States prisons are the last refuge of the brainless. If the inmates are failures, at least they were reaching, most in very small ways, but some reach is certainly preferable to no reach at all. The cop, as I've stated before, is a guy who can do no other type of work, who can feed himself only by feeding upon this garbage dump. What am I doing here, Faye? I fell into this garbage can in a narcotic stupor, and they just closed the lid for good. Someone is going to be hurt, my friend. When it's over, someone's going to be hurting bad, and it won't be us. It won't be you. Be assured that your safety will always enter any defense move I make. Your safety first, always. I was supposed to be gone from this place years ago, free, wrecking worlds, destroying the unrighteous, dying on my feet. Pigs come here to feed on the garbage heap for 2 reasons, really. The first half because they can do no other work. Frustrated men, soon to develop sadistic mannerisms. And the second half, sadists out front, suffering under the restraints placed upon them by an equally sadistic, vindictive society. The sadist knows that to practice his religion upon the society at large will bring down upon his head their sadistic reaction. Killing is great fun, but not at the risk of getting killed. Note how they squeak and pull out their hair over losing even one. But the restraints come off when they walk through the compound gates. The whole posture goes through a total metamorphosis. Inflict pain, satisfy the power complex, and get it checked. How can the sick administer to the sick? In the well-ordered society, prisons would not exist as such. If a man is ill, he should be placed in the hospital, staffed by the very best of technicians. Men would never be separated from women. These places would be surfeited with equipment and meaningful programs, even if it meant diverting funds from another or even from all other sectors of the economy. It's socially self-destructive to create a monster and loose him upon the world. But we can't cure with diagnosis. Comrade Stender, and I dig speaking with you like this, you can only listen, no back talk. Breakfast is here. Power to the people. Tuesday, March 24th, 1970. The monster they've engendered in me will return to torment its maker from the grave, the pit, the profoundest pit. Hurl me into the next existence. The descent into hell won't turn me. I'll crawl back to dog his trail forever. They won't defeat my revenge. Never, never. I'm part of a righteous people who anger slowly but rage undamned. Will gather at his door in such a number that the rumbling of our feet will make the earth tremble. I'm going to charge them for this. 28 years without gratification. I'm going to charge them reparations in blood. I'm going to charge them like a maddened, wounded, rogue male elephant, ears flared, trunk raised, trumpet blaring. I'll do my dance in his chest, and the only thing he'll ever see in my eyes is a dagger to pierce his cruel heart. This is one nigger who is positively displeased. I'll never forgive, I'll never forget, and if I'm guilty of anything at all, it's of not leaning on them hard enough. War without terms. Wednesday, March 25th, 1970, early morning. I just reread the above paragraph. Foul mood last night. It's not light out yet, so I guess I can say tonight, but I've been asleep. There's a Hawaiian on the tier who wants to transfer to Vacaville. He is playing crazy. His dementia takes the form of, quote, nigger baiting, end quote, especially when the bull is on the tier, who by the way enjoys the shit out of it. None of the brothers say a word, however. This little boy blows the whole line. The other little boys laugh. The pig grins. I don't get too upset at the little boy. He is a minnow. The upsetting point is that this Hawaiian has very large purple lips, skin tones darker than mine, and a very large wide nose. His hair is very nearly like my sister's. This clown is talking about killing all the niggas. The pitiful jackass would die right beside me. I think what may be most bitter in a thing like that is the knowledge that my enemies have turned the entire world against me. The shibboleths that define me are now universal. Anyone who learns them is in or out, depending. How do you deal with the perverted, disease-bearing, voracious bastard who wants to cast his image over all things, eat from every plate at every table, police the world with racist shibboleths and a dying doctrine of marketplaces peopled by monopolies, top-heavy bureaus, and scum-swilling pigs to gun down any who would object? The concept of nonviolent protest, whatever political forms it may take, presumes two things about the imperialist establishment that are so obviously historically unrealistic, so logically unsound, that the espousal of any purely nonviolent anti-establishment moan reduces one automatically to the absurd, and any strong espousal of a purely nonviolent anti-establishment policy reduces one automatically to a corpse. The first presumption is mercy. It presumes the possible existence of mercy on the part of a breed whose heart is as cold as the snows. It presumes existence of a restraint mechanism that in other breeds and other animals precludes the harming of one's kind unless placed under the most extreme compulsions of self-preservation. But history shows no justification for so wild a presupposition. I refer you to Leopold II's Congo, the Indian Wars of the last century, the Union of South Africa, Sharpsville, the Philippines at the turn of the century. I refer you to Germany during the Depression and war years. I refer you to Vietnam. Just a cursory reading of history and just a glance about me now would show that I could expect more mercy from a pack of Bengal tigers. Any claims that purely nonviolent political agitation has served to force back the legions of capitalist expansion are false. The theory of nonviolence is a false ideal. The Hindus failed because of this moral aspect in their characters, precluding any large-scale organized violence. The forms of slavery merely changed for them. Of what value is quasi-political control if the capitalists are allowed to hold on to the people's whole means of subsistence? And in the case of India and foreign capitalists, have any of the people's needs been met? Do they still have rice riots? Do they still sleep in the streets? These people were betrayed by false leaders with false ideals. Compare India with China. They were both supposedly liberated at the same time. India may have had a year or more of what is loosely termed, quote, political self-determination, end quote. China's problems in the late 40s were 10 times more severe, but today there is no one hungry in China. For the first time, its population is united and organized under a government as decentralized and representative as a huge modern industrial-based society can be. China, land of the coolie, slave labor, open-door policies, floor mat of the West. They're vying for first place in every important economic sector today. Remember the 1839 Opium War, the Boxer Rebellion. A trial of combat with China today would be Russian roulette with a fully loaded .45 automatic, self-destruction, suicide. All of the third world political movements that are forcing the retreat of colonialism have learned to deal with the expeditionary armies of colonialism. There is no case of successful liberation without violence. How could you neutralize an army without violence? The people of the U.S. are held in the throes of a form of colonialism. Control of their subsistence and nearly every aspect of the circumstances surrounding their existence has passed into the hands of a clearly distinct and alienated oligarchy. If today's young revolutionary vanguard are not merely entertaining themselves with a new kind of, quote, chicken, end quote, a political form of bumper tag, if they seriously intended to step out front and take the monster to task, they should understand from the outset that the monster is merciless. The second presumption contained in the concept of nonviolent political agitation is inherent in the statement of this policy as it stands alone. The mere utterance of nonviolent policy statements implies that it is possible for one to take the opposite course and pursue violence. But in our case, this has not been proved. In all cases, there is a contradiction and a dangerous presumption in the statement and pursuit of nonviolent political policy, especially when the opposition is not so committed. The danger derives from the very realistic fact that the statement and pursuit of nonviolent tactics will always be mistaken for weakness, as these tactics stand alone. The contradiction is then revealed in that power is expected to surrender to weakness. Pure nonviolence as a political ideal, then, is absurd. Politics is violence. It may serve our purpose to claim nonviolence, but we must never delude ourselves into thinking that we can seize power from a position of weakness with half measures, polite programs, righteous indignation, loud entreaties. If this agitation that we like to term as nonviolent is to have any meaning at all, we must force the fascist to taste the bitterness of our wrath. Nonviolence must constantly demonstrate the effects of its implied opposite. The dialectic between Narodnik and nihilist should never break down. One should not exist without the concomitant existence of the other. Breakfast is here. Long live the guerrillas. Wednesday, March 25th, 1970. Late. I suspect that the pigs have stopped the correspondence form that I sent to your friend. The 4 or 5 people who attacked the pigs last week, recall they had weapons, took the keys. They're out of the hole, isolation already, over here with us. I don't, however, suspect foul play too strongly. The Mexican was beaten pretty badly. Just lit the 41st cigarette. The punks throw stuff at us through the bars when they are let out for showers. I mean foul stuff too. We each get a half hour a day, 6 days of the week, to shower or exercise in the limited space in front of our cells. The walks are segregated. Blacks are never allowed to walk or shower or even to come out of their cells at all when the whites are out of their cells. The more perverse of, quote, Hitler's little helpers, end quote, save their excretions to throw in our cells as they walk back and forth to their shower and exercise. The shit literally flies at us almost every day. The blacks don't even consider throwing excrement. We retaliate by shooting at them with little, crudely made zip guns and powerful slingshots fashioned from the elastic on our shorts. If the pigs were interested in stopping this silly shit, they would integrate the shower walks. If they fear they would lose control that way, they could segregate the whole building. No whites or Mexicans on this floor at all. To seize power for the people and relegate fascism to the history books, the vanguard must change the basic patterns of thought. We are going to have to study the principles of people's movements. We are going to have to study them where they took place and interpret them to fit our situation here. We have to yet discover the meaning of people's war, people's army. The righteous people of the world who are struggling with the monster on the only terms that he can be fought must have many reservations concerning us, especially those of us who are black. What are the fierce and wonderful people of Vietnam thinking of us? Where is the real left wing? What has been done to us that makes us fail to resist? The successes of China, Cuba, Vietnam, and parts of Africa cannot be attributed to any innate, singular quality in the characters of their people. Men are social creatures, herd animals. We follow leaders. The success or failure of mass movements depends on their leadership and the method of their leadership. We must take our lessons from these people, reorganize our values, decide whether it is our personal desire to live long or to chance living right. People's war, class struggle, war of liberation means armed struggle. Men like Hoover, Reagan, Hunt, Agnew, Johnson, Helms, Westmoreland, Abrams, Campbell, Carswell are dangerous men who believe that they are the rightful Führers of all the world's people. They must be dealt with now. Can men like these be converted? Will they allow anyone to maneuver them out of their positions of power while they still live? Would Nixon accept a people's government, a people's economy? How can we deal with these men who have so much at stake, so much to defend? Honesty forces us to the conclusion that the only men who will successfully deal with the Hoovers, Helmses, and Abramses will be armed men. It's obvious to me that nothing of any consequence can be achieved while these men rule. Class struggle means the suppression of the opposing class and suppression of the American general staff and the corporate elite. The moment this three-headed monster detects the danger contained in our ideals and ideas, he will react violently against us. Just the whisper of revolt excites in him a swift and terrible reflex, so swift we won't even know how we died. Thursday, March 26, 1970. So, my friend, the terms have been established. That is the only way I will accept any more time in this life. I don't want to live any other way. I want my food and drink from the people's stash. I want to hide, run, and look over my shoulder. The only woman that I could ever accept is one who would be willing to live out of a flight bag, sleep in a coal car, eat milkweed, bloodroot, wild greens, dandelions, a rabbit, a handful of rice. She would have to be willing to run and work all night and watch all day. She would bathe when we could, change clothes when we could. She would own nothing, not solely because she loved me, but because she loved the principle, the revolution, the people. I don't think this rotten society has produced any such wonderful creatures. There is a Cuban brother here on the tier. His folks left, but he supports the revolution. He can run some beautiful things about the people of Cuba when he'll talk, and when I can understand him. The thing that fixes me best is how the revolution is gauged to operate on the family plan. Children with a role, women in the same roles as men, education standardized. I remembered that those people had been some of the most corrupt in the Western world. Remember when the U.S. was in control? It was just like one of the Mexican border towns. The revolution brought all of those wonderful new people into existence. It will be the same here, right on, to the most beautiful conclusion. Power to the people. If they try to read this, it will explain my somewhat damaged condition in court tomorrow. You are my favorite person, Face Tender. Take care of yourself.